Buckle in, sports fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show. The program will be starting in just a couple of minutes, so grab your popcorn and get ready to enjoy the show. While you're waiting, make sure you're following us on social media at WHBC Stream and staying tuned to WHBCStream.com. We're so glad to have you today on the program, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line on Twitter or call the show 352-639-0036. And thanks again for tuning in.
HBC. Well, hello. It is a good evening to you, and how you be? William Haynes here, you there, here on this Thursday night on the William Haynes Show. It has been so long since we have done this, probably about 5 months. No monologue or anything tonight, really just trying to shake the rust off if we can. We'll be taking some calls maybe a little bit later in the show. Before we get into any of that kind of stuff, though, I just, since there has been so many moves made by the Tampa Bay Rays, I would just like to take some time and go over everything that happened. Of course, during the layover as well, the last time we were on the air was after Game 6 of the 2020 World Series. The Bucks, they took home the Super Bowl trophy. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit at the back end of the show. And then before we really get into anything, since I brought up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm sure most of you are aware of the passing of former Buccaneers wide receiver Vincent Jackson. He was only 38 years old. He leaves behind a wife and his 4 kids. He was found dead in a hotel room in Tampa earlier this week. There's been a lot of speculation. I don't want to as much get into all that because I'm sure everyone listening knows about that, and who knows what information will come out after the autopsy. Maybe the family chooses to kind of keep that information in-house, whatever that ends up being. But, you know, just dedicate this show to him and his memory. Not only was he a tremendous player on the field, between the San Diego Chargers, and then it really hit his stride, I think, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I guess the Buccaneers, they really wasted some really good years of him, but brought Bucs fans a lot of joy. And then all the work that he did off the field was just as important. He grew up in a military family, and so he had his charity, his foundation set up to help military families. So really a big loss, and Vincent Jackson, you'll be missed. Getting past that, though, we look to all the transactions that have been made by the Rays. This was the first day of spring training officially. Pitchers and catchers reported today. Some trickled in yesterday. We saw Tyler Glasnow and all those guys on social media. It seems like every pitcher on the Rays now has this gigantic flow. Everyone just decided to grow their hair out. It'd be interesting to see how that goes over the course of the year. But yeah, pitchers and catchers, first day today. Position players will report next Tuesday. That's February 23rd. We'll probably be on the air around there. just to kind of get updated and continue on getting ready for the season. Now, the opening day, hopefully, if everything stays as scheduled, is not until April 1st. We'll be in Miami against the Marlins on that day. The first spring training game, though, is February 28th. That's next Sunday. The Rays will be at the Braves in Northport, which is about 20 minutes away from Charlotte Sports Park, so not too long of a jaunt. They're going to keep the spring training schedule a little bit limited in that they're basically playing a handful of teams. It's the Red Sox, the Braves, and the Twins, and I think the Orioles maybe a couple times because of the proximity with the COVID social distancing. It's amazing that we're still dealing with this. I think when we came off the layoff last year in summer camp, which was June and July of 2020. I remember everyone was saying, well, let's get through this season, and then by the time we get to opening day of 2021, this will all be behind us. And of course, with the numbers, with the COVID virus and everything, it's just as bad, if not worse, than where we were last year. So I guess the talk is now maybe by 2022 we'll be able to be back to normal and not have to worry about players testing positive and social distancing in the dugout, can't spit, no sunflower seeds, no celebration. So hopefully by 2022 that will all be behind us. So I've got the sheet in front of me. I've got about 1,500 transactions that the Rays have made over the course of the offseason. They've been really busy. They have really transformed the team. We know basically the losses, I think, at least in the short term, are more significant than who they brought in. They, of course, declined the option for Charlie Morton, so they could have kept him for the 2021 season at the rate of $15 million. They declined that option. They try and renegotiate. I think that the report, I don't know if it's official, 8 to 10 million, I think was maybe as much as they were willing to pay him, maybe less, to try and get him to take that hometown discount, but he does not. He returns to the place where he made his major league debut, the Atlanta Braves, and I believe they gave him exactly $15 million. So he leaves to go there, and then really I think the biggest offseason move was the trade of Blake Snell to the San Diego Padres. I totally forgot to include it in here today. We'll definitely talk about it the next time we're on the air if I can whip it up during the break. In the Players Tribune, I believe, Blake Snell put out a little piece talking about, I guess I didn't read it yet, but his time with the Rays and that Game 6 decision where Kevin Cash, pulled him out. He was rolling, in the sixth inning. There was a man on first, but he had basically obliterated all the batters that he was about to face the third time through. As talkative, as much of an outspoken guy as Blake Snell was, it really was only a matter of time before that kind of piece came out. I don't think anyone was surprised by it. I'm interested, actually, to see the content that's in it. And again, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend checking it out. But he goes to the Padres, and the Rays do get a sizable haul in return, a potential replacement in Luis Patino. Maybe a couple catchers, but one that could probably play right now, most likely be the backup to start the year, Francisco Mejia, and another catcher as well that we'll talk about in Blake Hunt, and then also another pitcher in Cole Wilcox. So a 4-player haul in return for Blake Snell. I know Blake Snell had all those years left on his contract, and that for a former Cy Young winner and everything that he's been able to accomplish, the $10 to $12 million range that we were going to have to pay him was certainly a bargain deal, but they decide that they want to move on. I actually had something that I wanted to share, something that I collected. Multiple people tweeted it out, but the one I have here is from Matt Germain. The Rays could have kept Charlie Morton for $15 million. Instead, they decided to sign these guys: Chris Archer for $6.5 million, Michael Wacha for $3 million, Rich Hill for $2.5 million, Colin McHugh for $1.8 million. Those are all pitchers, and those salaries total $13.8 million. So, you save $1 million, and you basically have 5 guys to replace one. That's kind of the logic if you've seen the movie or you've read the book Moneyball, where they lost Jason Giambi and Johnny Damon, excuse me. I think Brad Pitt, I immediately go to Matt Damon as well. And then Jason Isringhausen. They lost those three guys, and their approach in that offseason was, how are we going to replace this many hits, this many runs knocked in, this many home runs? And obviously, with less money, you can't do it one for one. You're not going to replace Jason Giambi with another first baseman, it's one for one, but they brought in guys that could kind of replicate that. So instead of paying $15 million to one guy and Charlie Morton, they pay, $14 million to five different pitchers. And I think there's some that are some really bargain deals. I think Rich Hill, for the $1.8 million was it that we're paying him, I find it a really hard time that he's not better than 1/8 of Charlie Morton, and we're getting him at 1/8 of the price if my math is checking out, as Dave Wills always says. When I got into this business, I was told there would be no math, but I think they're definitely comparable players. Rich Hill, this will be his age 40 season. Fastball is not quite what it used to be, but he's got a nasty curveball that hitters have always had trouble with. And his return to the American League, I think for the first time since he was with the Red Sox long ago. So he'll get to fool some new hitters. So I guess with that long preamble, I'm just going to go in chronological order from when the deals were made, and we'll talk about what the Rays gave up and ultimately what they got in return, which is really the most important part. So we start with December 10th. The Rays trade first baseman Nate Lowe and first baseman Jake Gunther, who is a 23-year-old, high A was the last level he played for the Rays, and a player to be named later to the Texas Rangers for catcher slash first baseman slash corner outfielder Heriberto Hernandez, shortstop Oslevis Bazabe, and right fielder Alexander Ovals. We'll have to get the pronunciations down if they do get to the big leagues. I think the most important player in that haul would have been the catcher, first baseman, outfielder Heriberto Hernandez. He's 21 years old. He was in 2019 an Arizona League All-Star. Of course, the Rangers minor league affiliate. He was assigned to Low A Charleston. That's the new, low. They did a big minor league shuffle. I think the only, instead of 3 levels of single A, rookie A, low A, or short season A, and then full season A, now there's just a low A and a high A. And I think we lost the Bowling Green Hot Rods, I believe, was the team that we lost in that, and we picked up the Charleston, I want to say River Dogs, but he'll go to low A, and at 21 years old, he's probably a ways away, of course. One of the potential replacements for Ronaldo Hernandez, who the Rays recently traded, and we'll get into that later. Right now, according to MLB.com, Heriberto Hernandez is the number 22 ranked prospect in the system, and for future reference, for whatever reason, there's only 30 prospects on that list, so in the top 30, he's number 22. Oslevis Bazabe, he's only 20 years old. He's not in the top 30. He was low A basically in 2019, as there was no minor leagues in 2020. He was the number 15 prospect in the Ranger system when they traded him. So I guess what that tells me is that the Rangers have a really bad minor league system, that he's 15 in theirs and not ranked in ours. But either way, he is a shortstop, so another infield prospect. Probably, trade fodder down the line. And Alexander Ovals, he's 20 years old, unranked, and the last time he was in the minor leagues, he was in low A, so another guy that's a ways away from reaching the major leagues. I think this trade was ultimately made. I mean, the fact that they traded 2 first basemen, I think they were, I guess that's something they see maybe as a clog, or they just don't see anything in Jake Gunther, the fact that he's 23 and only in high A right now. But to trade Nate Lowe, they knew that they were going to keep G-Man Choi. They have Yandy Diaz that can play first base. They have Mike Brasso that can play first base. They've got some guys. I'm not too well versed actually in the first baseman that they have in the minor leagues. That's one that might be one organizational weakness that they may have to shore up here. G-Man Choi playing in an arbitration year. He is 29 years old, so I'm not quite sure how much farther the Rays want to take that with him. A fan favorite. He's been really great defensive first baseman, really clutch hitter, good eye. But behind him, after Nate Lowe being traded, I'm not sure quite what the depth is at that position. And then again, Heriberto Hernandez, a very versatile guy. He's a ways away, but has shown some promise. We move ahead now to December 16th. The Rays re-signed catcher Mike Zunino to basically it's a 1-year deal. It'll pay him about $2 million this year in 2021 with a team option for a $4 million salary in 2022 that reportedly could be up to $7 million in incentive. So I guess if he ends up putting up JT Realmuto numbers in 2022, he could get up to $7 million. But who knows if he even... I don't think the Rays would probably pick up that option, but they wanted to give it to themselves. Mike Zunino, I would say, you're getting a pretty good deal from him at $2 million. I tend to be, it seems like, a bigger Mike Zunino fan than most of the Rays fans that I talk to. I think, baseball people have a good idea of his worth. Kevin Cash talks about it all the time, and this is what I always bring up. Kevin Cash, being a former major league catcher, he understands the importance of that position and the depth of that position. It really is one of the most, important players that you have on the field. A lot of guys just look at the batting average, and yes, Mike Zunino is horrible with the bat. Mike Zero, at certain times over his tenure with the Rays. Really bad at chasing that high and outside fastball, but did clobber a lot of home runs in the postseason, did come on strong there. But a pretty good defensive catcher. He's a big built guy, like a brick wall back there, but he has pretty nice agility, I would say. 2020 was a little bit strange with some pass balls, but it seemed like 2019 was a really strong year from him. And the most important part of Mike Zunino's game, in my opinion, is how he handles that pitching staff. With so much pitching turnover in this organization with starters and also relievers, you're bringing in a guy that, you trade during the middle of the season. I was trying to remember that guy that we brought in and he pitched Edgar Garcia. When you bring him in, on a Wednesday night and that's his first game with the Rays and he maybe has one or two chats with Kyle Snyder and then all of a sudden he gets thrown into a game. Well, if you have a presence like Mike Zunino that can get the best out of a guy like that, that's really going to play to your advantage. So to get him for $2 million, I think is really nice. And as good of a player as I think he is, obviously I think he's pretty much hit his ceiling at this point. He's never going to be a great hitter. Really powerful, kind of like a Hunter Renfroe who we got rid of, who's now with the Boston Red Sox. But, Zunino potentially a stopgap. I'm not sure if we're going to have a catcher that will be ready by 2022. I think Francisco Mejia will be. I think he'll even get some time as the number 2 catcher this season. So I think that's the thought process with that move being made. A couple days later, December 18th, the Rays signed right-handed pitcher Michael Wacha. Amazingly, he's only 29 years old. It seems like he's been in the league forever, and his probably his biggest career achievement, and it's always stuck out to me, is his potential. He was the National League Championship Series MVP in 2013. In that postseason, he pitched 21 innings and gave up only 1 earned run, which is really impressive. So could do some damage in October potentially with the struggles at times some of those Rays starters had in the playoffs. Maybe Michael Wacha, some sort of renaissance from him could come in handy. Looking at his stat line, go back a few years to 2017 with the Cardinals. 30 starts, he was 12-9, 4.13 ERA, 165 innings pitched. That was, I would say, probably his last, really full year. In 2018, 15 starts, 8-2, 4.76 ERA, 84 innings pitched, so about half of that. Did have some shoulder stuff then, I believe. He also had an oblique issue. 2019, he started 24 times in 29 total appearances, went 6-7 with a 4.76 ERA and 126 innings pitched. And last year with the Mets in a shortened season, only 8 starts, 1-4 record with a 6.62 ERA. We got to him pretty good, I believe, during the end of the regular season. if you recall. 34 innings pitched. He's had trouble with his shoulder in 2014, 17, and 20. So inflammation has been an issue for him. I don't know if he's had surgery, but I know he spent some significant time on the injured list. So maybe not a guy that's going to give us, 130, 140 innings, but if he can give us maybe 80, give us, 20 or so starts with the guys that we have. We probably have 6 or 7 pitchers maybe that could start if we need them to. A lot of those guys maybe being prospects that the Rays want to have some more time in the minors, like Luis Patino. Looking at Josh Fleming, and then also there was one other guy, Shane McClanahan as well, that could probably be starters, but the Rays will probably want to get some more time developing them. So Michael Wacha does fill that role. I didn't have the value, or I did on the tweet that I said, but I didn't have it written down. So $3 million he's on the books for this year, which, for a starting pitcher that could give you those stats that I just laid out, not a bad deal. And this will be his age 29 season. On December 19th, this is the big one. The Rays trade Blake Snell to the Padres for a catcher, Blake Hunt, right-handed pitcher Cole Wilcox, another catcher in Francisco Mejia, and a right-handed pitcher in Luis Patino. This was a really large haul. 2 catchers that are good. Blake Hunt is going to take some time, I believe. He's in low A right now. And Francisco Mejia, who will most likely start on the Major League roster as the number 2 catcher, and it'll be exciting to see him in spring training. And then some pitchers in Cole Wilcox, and then Luis Patino, who different results or different answers depending on who I've asked. A lot of people think he could use some more time in the minors, and maybe Durham could do him some good, but depending on where the starting rotation is, we may need him maybe as a bullet guy behind an opener. That might be a good chance to get him involved. I was going to say get his feet wet, but he does have some experience already in the major leagues, including in the postseason last year with San Diego. So going through the haul, the first guy, the catcher, Blake Hunt. So he's basically the second catcher behind Mejia, really in the haul. 22 years old. He's the number 24th ranked prospect in the Rays system. They assigned him to low A, so of course he's going to take some time. In 2019, in the minor leagues, he appeared in 89 games and slashed 255, 331, and 381. So kind of an average, batting average, and for low A or rookie short season A, whatever that is, that's not indicative of what player he'll end up being. He could be, a 180 major league hitter by the time all is said and done, but we'll keep an eye on him. A guy that really interested me, right-handed pitcher Cole Wilcox. He's 21 years old. He came out of college after his sophomore season. That was in spring of 2020 when his season got cut short with COVID. He played for the Georgia Bulldogs, was really good with them there. He's the number, I mentioned 21 years old. He's the number 18th ranked prospect, or no, I believe the number 8 prospect in the Rays system. For whatever reason, they have him at AAA. That's their estimate of where he'll be. I don't think the Rays have assigned him yet. He got the spring training invite. So we'll go from there. I could, maybe AA, who knows. In 2020, he was a 3rd-round draft pick, and he got a record for a 3rd-round pick, $3.3 million signing bonus. So to me, that's a guy that, in that draft, maybe the Rays saw as a good pitcher, but no way are they going to give, a rookie that they just drafted $3.3 million. They won't even give, player X, $5 million to keep him. I couldn't think of a good example, but a guy like Charlie Morton, they don't want to pay $15 million. Every million counts. So that they weren't going to do that. But with this trade, that was paid by the San Diego Padres, and now he's on that really cheap minor league deal with all those options and all those years. So now he comes into the Rays system as a top 10 prospect for them, and a really exciting a right-handed pitcher and a starter as well. So just another guy down the line. Brent Honeywell, Shane Baz, now Cole Wilcox being added into the mix. So a lot of exciting arms that will be coming through here shortly in the future, and really Luis Patino as well. A lot of guys we're going to see in spring training coming up here shortly that are very exciting, to say the least. The catcher, Francisco Mejia, he is 25 years old, with the Cleveland baseball team. I think we should just call them the Cleveland Spiders. I don't think they're going to announce that, but just for fun. He was with Cleveland in 2018, and at that time he was their top-ranked prospect. From then he was dealt to the Padres. But that was his last ranking. He's not in the Rays prospect ranking because I guess they have him defined as graduated now. He's a major league player, as he will be this season. 25 years old again. The last season he played in the minors, this is major league at bats. 334 at bats, and he slashed 225. 282 and an OPS instead of slugging for whatever reason at 668. He's got 12 home runs, so a decent amount of pop in that bat. That'll be interesting to see if we can get him going. The catcher position has always been, I think, something that's held the Rays lineup back. This is never going to be a top 10 lineup in the major leagues. This is a franchise that's based on run prevention, playing good defense, pitching, etc. But when you have a catcher that really can't hit, for his weight or, whatever expression you want to use, that can hold you back. And when you have a free out at the 7, 8, 9 spot in your order, that's really going to hold you back. So if we can get to a point where we have a catcher that has those attributes of Mike Zunino with the leadership and the defensive abilities, but also can hit. Wilson Ramos was an example of a guy that had a really good bat. He batted cleanup for us at times before we traded him in 2018, but he was a defensive liability. And then I believe at that time, Jesus Sucre was the other catcher that we had. So not a lot of defense to be found for the catcher position on that team. But anyway, it would be nice to get, for once, a well-rounded catcher, and Francisco Mejia could be just that. And then each guy that I listed, I was like, okay, this guy is really good, and then the next guy's even better, and the one after that is even better. I saved, I guess, the best for last. Luis Patino, 21 years old. He's a number 3 ranked prospect in the Rays system. Last year, with the San Diego Padres, I believe this is all of his major league experience. He is a starter. That's what he started all through the minor leagues, but he appeared in the bullpen, I suppose out of necessity, for the Padres last season. 17 and a third innings pitched, 18 hits allowed, 10 earned runs, 3 homers, faced a total of 85 batters to give you an idea. 21 strikeouts to 14 walks. So that's not a great ratio, the 3-2, or, however you want to say it. Usually you like it half as much walks as strikeouts. So could have potential control issue, but that's a really small sample size. I don't want to take too much stock in any of this until I see him play, and I'm looking to see him throw a bit in spring training, and a 5.19 ERA. Again, small sample size. Did have a couple of one-inning appearances against the Dodgers in that NLDS, and then I think got a couple of outs against the Cardinals in that wild card series. So he does also have some playoff experience. I think with 2020, it's playoff-ish experience. But either way, his feet have already kind of been under the fire, so it's really hard to say. We haven't heard one way or another. With the number 3 ranked prospect in your system, obviously it's a player that's very valuable to the Rays. You don't want to rush that. They don't need him right now. It's not like it's July and they've got all these injuries and it's, we got to bring this guy up because we need an arm. They can afford to be patient with him if they choose. ESPN has him listed as a reliever. I would assume that's just because that's what he did last year, but he is a starting pitcher, and hopefully we'll get to see that sometime shortly. And 21 years old, so he's still pretty young. So I've covered it obviously pretty extensively, but the departure of Blake Snell, anyone who's listened to this program over the course of last season knows how I feel about him. He's an incredible talent, homegrown, in the race system. So a guy that you hate to lose in that regard. And he loves St. Pete. I think he was really happy there. He signed that long-term deal. As soon as he got Scott Boras as his agent, I said it on this show, there's no way he finishes this contract with the Rays. And in fact, that ended up being the case. He'll get money after this contract is up, I'm sure. Whether or not it'll be with San Diego, who knows. But San Diego wants to be ultra aggressive right now. If I had to say, I was really angry. I was on vacation. December 29th, I guess, is when the trade was official. But I was angry when I saw the trade because I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Here we go again. I didn't know. I'm not a minor league baseball buff, so I didn't know anything about the haul. But now that we're a few months removed from it and I've had time to analyze the players we've got back in return, I really do think San Diego did overpay for Blake Snell. He's a guy that can be electric at times, but does not always do what's best for him. He seems like this was the gripe I always had with him, he wants to strike out every batter he faces, so he's never going to give you a hittable pitch. The problem with that is good hitters aren't going to swing at a lot of his pitches, so a lot of walks, really long at-bats as far as pitches are concerned. San Diego, I think their pitching coach, I can't think of his name, but he was with the Yankees, Larry Rothschild, I want to say, and he was known for getting a lot of Yankee pitchers, I guess, injured for overworking them. So obviously they're not in the new age with thinking, so Blake Snell may throw 130 pitches in 6-7 innings every time out and have elbow issues or whatever, but he's not going to be pulled after 70 pitches or whatever it was in the World Series. You're not going to see that in San Diego, so he'll have full reign to do what he wants to do. He'll probably be the ace of that staff. They have they picked up Yu Darvish. They have Chris Paddock. They've got guys, but I think Blake Snell will probably be opening day. Maybe it's in Petco where he played in the postseason last year. But I think moving forward for this Rays franchise, some really interesting pieces. Mejia, potentially catcher of the future. Luis Patino, potential ace of the future. Blake's, it could be a 1-for-1 Snell replacement if Luis Patino's potential is realized, in addition to a really good catcher, another catcher, and then a really good college prospect. So I think the Rays, I don't think they were actively looking to deal him. I think the Padres probably called the Rays because they wanted Snell and they figured he was probably available and they overpaid for him, I think. So a really good move overall. I think it sucks, that they're going to take that banner off Tropicana Field and he won't be there. But he's a big part of the Rays franchise history. The second Cy Young award in Rays history next to David Price. So he'll always be remembered as a great Ray, I think. And there was, I think, bound to be some animosity there between him and Cash. I think he's always the slapdick prospect, excuse the language, remark in regards to Pham being traded last offseason. So there's always been a little bit of friction there, and I think the Rays weren't necessarily reluctant to get rid of him. They were okay with it, and they liked I'm sure the haul they got in return. So moving forward now, another small trade, December 29th, I guess, was when it was official, the same day as the Snell trade. But they traded left-hand pitcher Jose Alvarado to the Phillies in a 3-team deal that sent from the Dodgers a player to be named later and first baseman Dylan Paulson. So maybe he's the first baseman of the future, who knows. Dylan Paulson, he's a 23-year-old unranked in the Rays system prospect. They assigned him to Double-A Montgomery, so obviously at 23 years old, he's a little ways down the line. So maybe 2 years away from the major league, so he'll be 25, 26 maybe by the time he gets to the bigs, potentially. Throughout his minor league career, I believe, or maybe it was just 2019 /243, 366, and 433. So not too indicative, but the fact that I guess at single A, he was only hitting 243. Not great, but I don't know anything about him past that point. So Jose Alvarado didn't, I think, have much of a future with the Rays. Had a really strong 2018, a really frustrating 2019 that was filled with some injuries. He had to go home to Venezuela to take care of a family issue, and he was not able to throw while he was over there. So he came back, and they just threw him right back into the mix and had, I believe, an oblique issue, and he really wasn't the same after that. I know we've had conversations with people on this show, frustrated about him, and rightfully so. I was always kind of holding on to that promise that he showed in 2018, but it was never realized. He threw, I think it was against the Yankees or the Astros in the playoffs. They gave him, I think, one appearance, and he couldn't hit the strike zone. I mean, he was throwing it over the catcher's head and into the backstop. So control was a big issue for him. He would walk guys, and then, you walk two guys and give up a single, and all of a sudden, the game is blown open. And that's not a guy you can have in the back end. He is a back end quality guy when he's at his best, but I think the time was right to deal him. They want arms that they can count on, or at least guys that they can give a chance. I think they knew what Alvarado was going to be. Let's get something different. So they went ahead and did that, and got a little bit of value out of it. So moving forward now, into basically a full month without any transactions. January was just, I wasn't going to talk about spring training invites. A lot of the main prospects, Franco will be there, etc. But in February 2nd, the Rays signed right-handed reliever Hunter Strickland to a minor league deal, so they're not going to pay him too much. Throughout his career, he has a 16-16 record with a 3.23 ERA, 21 total saves. He's 32 years old. He can throw pretty hard. I think he hit, 99 when he threw behind Bryce Harper. For whatever reason, he's got a history with Harper. If you're curious, I can link it on my Twitter at WHBC Stream. Make sure you follow that, by the way, for all updates on future shows. There's on Sports Blog Nation YouTube channel, there's a beef history video between Hunter Strickland and Bryce Harper. It is really interesting. We won't see the Phillies this year, but then maybe he'll be on the Rays the next time we do. That would be pretty funny. The only reason I really bring that up is because that's really the only notable thing about him. He's pitched in the playoffs a couple times. I know he was with the Nationals, I want to say during the World Series run in 2019. But not a guy that was heavily used. He was also on a Giants World Series team. I believe he set the record for most home runs allowed in the postseason, and the Giants still won the World Series that year, so against the Royals, so that would have been 2014. 32 years old, he's certainly been around. So, minor league deal, low risk. I would say probably low reward. They just want to get arms. I was listening to a countdown to opening day, I think, provided by Rays Radio and WDAE, and they had an interview with Eric Neander, and they were talking with him, and Neander seemed pretty charged about this idea, and I guess something that must have been very apparent to him over the course of the 2020 season. He was saying that in terms of arms, estimating what we'll need, we want to overshoot, if anything. We don't want to undershoot. Because we saw at times during last year, not really in 2019, but in 2018 a little bit as well, where there's a shortage of arms. And I think, we unprecedented, that word needs to be retired, I think. It should be illegal to say it after this is all said and done just because of how much it's been overused. But in the literal sense of unprecedented, to go from 2019, 162 game season, to go into 2020 thinking it's a regular year spring training, then there's a 3-month layoff until June, July, and then a 60-game season, and then the next year in 2021 you go back to 162. We've never seen this before. We don't know what it's going to do to pitchers. We talked about the layoff and the shorter spring training in 2020, and that's a short-term view. But what happens when we stretch them back out all the way? There could be more injuries, 2020 probably had the most injuries per capita, shorter season, but per game, per games played, so many pitchers going down. So we may see more of that going into 2021. I certainly hope not, but there will always be injuries. And with the Rays, that's how you get pitching depth, throughout your organization and picking up guys, maybe like Hunter Strickland. And who knows, he could turn out, to be an Oliver Drake type. I'm a guy that's well-traveled. He's a little bit older, but, he can get you out sometimes. And he's a guy that's obviously fiery, doesn't lack confidence, I would say. So, maybe a guy you could have in that back end, who knows. But low risk involved there. Moving ahead to February 8th, we traded right-handed pitcher Aaron Slegers to Joe Madden and the Los Angeles Angels in exchange for a player to be named later. Aaron Slegers, Sledgehammer as he was known as throughout the Rays fan community. He'll be missed, I'm sure, as a member of the stable. I got to start with the Rays, I remember, against the Red Sox early on as a bolt guy and almost blew a game. We were blowing them out, so we put him in and gave up a lot of runs. But really did come on strong down the stretch. He's a big, tall guy. Can throw pretty hard. Was good. I remember him well. I think he had a 4-inning opener appearance against the Yankees as well at Yankee Stadium. So those are the memories. Short-lived Rays tenure. I don't know what we'll get back. That was just to clear roster space. I guess they felt better about guys they were bringing in. They want a fresh face, or whatever the case is. So Aaron Slegers, farewell. And he'll join Joe Madden again in Anaheim. February 9th, we signed Chris Archer. He's back to a 1-year, $6.5 million deal. So it's just a 1-year contract straight up, no options, anything like that. He was with the Rays, of course, from 2012 to 2018. He's 32 years old now. We know in 2018 we traded him to the Pittsburgh Pirates in exchange for Austin Meadows, Tyler Glasnow, and a player to be named later that ended up becoming Shane Baz, who's a top pitcher prospect in our organization. And what if I had told you at that point that we got all those players in exchange for a 2-year loan of Chris Archer, and we end up getting him back and for a cheaper price when all said and done? The Pirates declined his $11 million option for 2021. They paid him, a couple $1 million in a settlement, basically, and he comes over to the Rays for $6.5 million. I think it's good to have him back. He, I think, had ultimately a good experience with the Rays. I couldn't really find any articles, but I do remember when we traded him in 2018 that it was a weird vibe that day with him packing up his bags and going, because we were in the midst not of a pennant race, but a chance to make a playoff spot. We had one of the best second halves probably the team has ever had in 2018 without him, but the Rays really caught fire. And I remember Kevin Cash that day said that trade certainly didn't make the team better in that moment. It was made for the future, and ultimately he was right. But to make that trade at that time and now to have Chris Archer back, he seemed a little miffed when he got traded. I think he liked being here in St. Pete and all that. So he wanted to come back. I listened to an interview he did today. I think it was just a Zoom room kind of thing, but it was on. I'll give a shout out to him. Steve Carney. Always listen to his Inside Pitch pod. It was a daily thing, and that's no longer going on. And now he got, I guess, a deal to do a new podcast, Under the Orange Roof. It's called. It's a weekly edition now, not a daily, but would definitely go check that out anywhere you find podcasts. But he included a clip from the interview, and Archer is basically, he said that the Rays called him about 10 days after the World Series was over with interest, and he made note to say that they made him a good enough offer that showed him that they had respect for what he could bring to the table, which basically means that if the Rays had lowballed him, he would have just told him to, screw you, I'm not coming back. But I don't think it probably started at 6.5. Could have started at 6, whatever, and they negotiated from there. But the Rays, to give him this kind of money, obviously sees some value. Is coming off an injury and has not had a good last couple seasons. But if he could return to his Rays form, which was inconsistent, I will say, he could be a really good addition. I mean, we're talking potentially number 2, number 3 starter in this rotation at his best. I don't know if he'll give us a full season. Could be injury concerns. He could, I don't know about a minor league assignment, but it seemed like everyone was cautioning, don't expect him to pitch 180 innings or whatever the case, make 40 starts. But good to have him in the fold. A 4-time opening day starter for the Rays. He really was kind of the face of the franchise, along with Kevin Kiermaier during that stretch when he came over to the Rays. His scouting report, he's got a 4-seam fastball, lives around 93 to 96, but can get up to 99. And he said his arm feels as good as it ever has after the surgery. Slider, that's 86 to 89 that I remember in 2018. That was kind of my first year really, really watching the Rays, so that was my introduction kind of to Chris Archer. And every time he made a start, all the pregame coverage was, this is probably one of the best sliders in Major League Baseball. It's really good. It has some nice late movement on it. So it's got a really nice 1-2 punch. And also a circle change, which I don't really think we have any pitchers that throw circle changes. Of course, everyone, a lot of pitchers have changeups, but that kind of change at 86 to 90. So a lot of variety there. And between the slider and the change, there's some nice mixing and matching there. So some negatives against him. He does tend to expose the ball a little early, which kind of can give the hitter a hint as to what one of those 3 pitches it is going to be. I think his struggles in Pittsburgh, and this is really interesting. Steve Carney mentioned this on that show that I talked about. Pittsburgh asked him to throw a lot of 2-seam fastballs, which compared to a 4-seam, it's lower in velocity and tends to have a little bit more movement, but sometimes they really hang. And so instead of, 95, 96, whatever, it's 91, maybe 92. And when those hang, that can do some more damage. Just throwing a donut out over the plate. And if that's not a pitch that he's good at, obviously that's going to happen more times than not. There was a lot of home runs at Pittsburgh off that 2-seam pitch. Interestingly enough, that was also an issue that Tyler Glass now is having in Pittsburgh. And they brought him over to the Rays, no more 2-seams, and all of a sudden he becomes really dominant Cy Young candidate going into every season now at this point. He was last year, and I'm sure he will be this season as well. He'll, I think, certainly be the ace of the staff going into the year. But anyway, I think returning to his Rays form, Kevin Cash, Kyle Snyder, working, sprinkling their pixie dust on him could do that him some good. And I think if he can stay healthy, and he's always going to have trouble with consistency, but if he can just stay healthy and be out there every 5th day, we could see some nice results. In June of 2020, he had thoracic outlet syndrome surgery. So in basically the summer camp of 2020, when they returned, he had some pain in his neck. And I did a little reading. It's an issue from the neck that stems all the way down to the shoulder and into the armpit. So they had to take out a rib and some muscle, I guess, in his shoulder to do this surgery. It's a common, I guess, pitcher surgery. And apparently it was very successful. He did not pitch in 2020, obviously. He's going to be ready for spring training out the gate. I believe just full strength. He's full ready to go. He said it's the strongest, it's the healthiest his arm has ever felt. So that tends to happen. Adrian Peterson is what I always think of, the running back, long time of the Vikings. May now be signing with the Bucks. But he had tore his ACL and had to get surgery on it. And usually running backs, that the position he played, were not as good after that. You're not as quick, agile. You can't run as well. Well, with how modern these surgeries have become, Adrian Peterson came back stronger than ever after that surgery. I think that's when he had the 2,000 yards coming off of that. So sometimes surgery can maybe do a guy some good and he got some rest. I really would. I'm buying stock certainly in what Chris Archer can do in 2021. I think it's going to be exciting. And there was not much notable in the back half of 2018 for Pittsburgh. They brought him in to make a run at the playoffs, and I don't think he was great. But his full season in 2019 made 23 starts through 120 innings, a 5.19 ERA, 143 strikeouts to 55 walks, which I would say is a pretty good ratio considering he does have some issues with walks. But those 25 home runs, I think, was a big issue. It seemed like every time you're watching MLB, highlights, wherever it was always in PNC Park and Chris Harcher giving up a home run into the Allegheny River. I know he had an issue with Derek Dietrich and, the home run celebrations, all that. He's a competitor. I'm excited to see him back in a Rays uniform. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that he would be returning to the Rays, but never say never, and in 2021 he does make his Rays return. Moving forward now, February 17th, we signed Oliver Drake to a 1-year, $1 million deal, basically re-signed him. A member of the Rays bullpen for the last, I want to say 2 years, but really 2020 was when he was at his best for the Rays. There's a nice splitter, does tend up to give up the home run now and again, but $1 million for this guy, I would definitely take that. He was one of our better relievers, actually, in the back end of the bullpen, so could give us some production there as well. February 17th, also, the Rays signed left-handed pitcher Rich Hill to a 1-year, $3 million deal. So pretty cheap. He is 40 years old in his career. He's 67 and 44, 3.79 ERA. He's thrown almost 1,000 innings in his career. I think if he throws like 30 innings, he'll get to that 1,000 mark in a Rays uniform, which is pretty neat. At age 40, you never know, but he's been everywhere. I think he's probably played for like almost 10 teams at this point. In 2018, he had some issues with blisters, so not a reoccurring thing. Hopefully, 11-5 was the record, 366 in 24 starts. I believe he did appear in that World Series at least once for the Dodgers. He does have some good playoff experience with them. And obviously a veteran, he's seen it all. In 2019, missed some time with a forearm strain, but went 4-1, a 2.45 ERA, 13 starts total, and in the shortened 2020 season with the Minnesota Twins, 8 games. I don't think they were all starts. A 2-2 record, a 3.03 ERA, and 38 innings pitched. I think one of the biggest stories for the Twins in that season with the Twins was how good of a mentor he was to some of Minnesota's younger starters, and that was one of the things Eric Neander talked about as well, was that with how many young, impressionable pitchers are in this organization, to have guys like Rich Hill goes beyond that, $3 million. Even if he's not going to give you a lot of innings, he can still provide value. I think there's a lot of comparisons that can be made between him and Charlie Morton, and again, you're getting him essentially, if my math was right, I don't know why I said 1/8, 1/5 of the price as Charlie Morton, and I think you're going to get a lot more than 1/5 of the value. In his scouting report, the fastball was down in 2020. Some of that could have been abbreviated spring training. He didn't want to force anything. It was 88 miles per hour on the four seam, so maybe he can push that back over 90, but I can't say for certain. And a 73 mile an hour curveball that I think is one of the more well-known pitches in Major League Baseball, kind of a wipeout curveball, like guess who, Charlie Morton. So I think if he can give you if he can give you half of what Charlie Morton gave you, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. And I would imagine he'll start the year as maybe the number 3, number 4 starter. I would imagine out the gate with the rotation, if you're wondering, anyone that cares, I would probably have Glasnow. Well, Glasnow is the ace, yeah. Yarbrough at the 2. I would go Archer at the 3. Maybe Rich Hill at the 4. And then at the 5, do Michael Wacha / opener day. And they've got a guy, Colin McHugh, that could be a bulk guy. Josh Fleming could be a bulk guy. The roster's going to be cut down from 26, down from 28 last year. So they're not going to have necessarily the flexibility that they did last season. So not as many arms. But I would imagine they're going to go really thin on position players to try and maybe load up on arms. That'll be interesting to follow. February 17th, the Rays trade another member of the stable. No, the pitcher, John Curtis, to the Miami Marlins for first baseman Evan Edwards. I just wanted to point this out. doing the research for the show. It was really fun, actually. John Curtis was born April 4th, 1993. Do you know what else happened that day? The Miami Marlins played their first game in franchise history. So the Marlins and John Curtis were basically born on the same day, and now they are united as one. So I thought that was just kind of a neat thing. What are the odds that something like that happens? So it's only fitting he goes to Miami. And in return from the Marlins, the Rays receive first baseman Evan Edwards. Now, Edwards is a 23-year-old. He's been assigned to Low A, which I believe is Charleston, if I'm not mistaken. He's unranked in the Rays system, a fourth rounder in 2019. Looks like no stats, no minor league stats. If he didn't play in the minors, and maybe he had rookie league or something in 2019, but obviously no minors league games in 2020. So he'll get to start off fresh in Low A, which I guess just be used now as the new short season rookie A, essentially. I don't know. And he's a left-handed bat, so I know nothing about Evan Edwards, but Jake Bauers what came to my mind when I was filling this out. You know, a lefty first baseman. Kind of under the radar for a little bit. So interesting to see. With John Curtis, he was fine as a pitcher. Certainly had his flaws. He was not an insane talent. He did well with what he had. So you're not going to get a whole lot in return for that. But you do get something, and I guess this is about clearing our roster spots because you can only have so many players. And I think this was paving the way for the next trade I'm going to talk about, which also came, I guess, officially on the same day, February 17th. The Rays traded high A shortstop Nick Sogard. I knew nothing about him. I thought of Eric Sogard when I saw his name. And catcher Ronaldo Hernandez, which was the 14th ranked prospect in the Rays system, to the Red Sox in exchange for left-handed pitcher Jeffrey Springs and right-handed pitcher Chris Mazza. So you get rid of Slegers, you get rid of Curtis, and you bring in these two characters from Boston. This was interesting. Of course, Chaim Bloom, being the GM in Boston, he was kind of the right-hand man to Eric Neander in Tampa Bay for all those years. Started in Boston last year, so he knows what Ronaldo Hernandez can be. So a lot of people were saying that, you know, maybe Eric Neander was getting one over on Chaim Bloom, but Ronaldo Hernandez is going to be a good player, I think. We all saw that home run blast that he hit in that scrimmage in summer training. That's really the only time we got to see him. Had not appeared in the major leagues. He's still, I think, in single A, or he may be moved up to double A this year. I don't know. So he's still a little ways away. I just saw it. I just want to mention it. Francisco Mejia, by the way, is a switch hitter, which at the catcher position could be sneaky valuable. I didn't see that until just now. But getting back to this trade with the Red Sox, I was kind of surprised when I saw this. I don't know anything about the guys that they got in return. We'll just kind of see on them. I don't tend to do scouting reports on relievers just because everyone does the same stuff. They've all got the fastball and probably one other pitch. But Jeffrey Springs is 28 years old. He's got 2 starts and 59 total appearances. Both of these guys have some starts, but they're going to be relievers, I think. These could both be bolt guys, potentially, which could be something to look for. Springs, in his career, has 84 innings pitched, 5-4 record, a 5.42 ERA, 91 walks to 44 strikeouts. So 50-50 almost ratio, not too bad. Chris Mazza is 31 years old, 6 starts and 18 total appearances, 46 innings pitched, a 2-3 record, a 4.80 ERA, and has 40 strikeouts to 20 walks in his career. I think really what this trade comes down to, with all the catchers that they had brought in through the various trades, I think like 2 or 3 of them they have now new. Ronaldo Hernandez did not necessarily fit into this. Francisco Mejia is closer to the major leagues than Ronaldo Hernandez, so you kind of make that switch off, and you get some pitchers that could provide some value. So I think that's really the logic behind that move. And another kind of oddball, I didn't have a date on this for whatever reason, but Colin McHugh brought in, he's 33 years old, signed him to a 1-year, $1.8 million deal. He spent some time with the Houston Astros. Notable, he was when they did the 2017 sign stealing investigation. He said he knew it was going on and he was remorseful for not doing something about it. So if you're interested in that, there you go. He's got 119 starts in his career in 210 total games played, so has started just as much as he's appeared as a reliever. I would imagine the Rays are probably going to have him start in the bullpen. Another prime bullpen bulk guy candidate, a guy that can give you 4 or 5 innings behind an opener. Has 800 total innings pitched in his career, a 58-43 record, a 3.95 ERA, and 771 strikeouts, 232 walks, so a good ratio there. He did not play in 2020. He was signed with the Red Sox, but he had an injury and it was not going to heal, and he just ended up opting out of the season. So when he last played in 2019 for the Houston Astros, he had 8 total starts and 35 total appearances with a 4-5 record, a 4.70 ERA, 74 innings pitched, 82 strikeouts, 30 walks. Again, I think this is a guy I haven't seen him play yet, but I would compare him to a Trevor Richards type, a guy that can give you starts. He's done it before. He's older, obviously, but is probably most likely to play behind an opener in bulk inning roles, or maybe he'll give you 2 or 3 innings at a time, and you can play him more often. Really just depends on where this bullpen ends up, and we're not going to know that until this regular season begins to unfold. We are now just over the 1 hour mark, so I'm going to take a short break. I know we have some people listening, so if they want to call, we'll start taking calls on the other side of the break. The number to call at that time, or you can call it during the commercial break, I suppose, and we'll keep you on hold, is the number to call is 877-566-1020. Again, 877-566-1020, internationally toll-free number. Hopefully it still works. I haven't tested it after all these months. We're going to take a quick 2020 sports update. We got some NHL hockey. We got some NBA basketball scores to give you. And then on the other side of the break, we'll wrap it up with some calls, some American League East previewing, and maybe some Bucks, some Lightning talk on the other side. HBC. A lot of NHL action going on tonight. At the beginning of the third period, it's the Rangers and Flyers tied at 1. The Lightning and Stars game was canceled today due to the power outages in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Also, at the beginning of the third period, it's the Devils off of a long break. They're up 3-1 on the best team in the Atlantic in the Boston Bruins. Also, early in the third period, the Penguins 2-0 over the Islanders. And also in the third period, the Blue Jackets 2-0 over the Predators. Also in the third, Maple Leafs 6, Senators 2. Midway through the third period, the Capitals 3-0 over the Buffalo Sabres. And the second period just underway in St. Louis, it's the Blues 1-0 over the Sharks. A couple NBA games going on tonight at halftime. It's the Raptors 58-41 over the Bucks. Getting underway at 10 o'clock, 2 games, the Nets and Lakers, and also the Heat and Kings. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Number to call is 877-566-1020.
Hey, sports fans! William's currently in the can, but he'll be right back. We're currently on a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us at 352-639-0036, or drop us a line on Twitter at WHBC Stream to tell us what's on your mind. We want to talk sports. We want to get unruly. We want you to tell us what you think, so we can argue. Anyway, when all that's said and done, please stay tuned for William's world-famous Around the XFL podcast and other projects that he's currently got in the works. Please visit WHBCstream.com, and thanks again for listening in.
HBC. And at 9:05, we are back on the William Haynes Show. We have talked all about the Rays transactions made over the offseason. And now for maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes of the show, taking your calls at 877-566-1020 and talking some other sports in the meantime. One thing I also wanted to discuss, the Philadelphia Eagles today have agreed to trade quarterback Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2021 third-round pick and a conditional 2022 second-round pick that could turn into a first-rounder. I know the Eagles had to give up a good amount of picks to trade up to that 2 spot in, the 2017 draft when they got Wentz. Obviously, Wentz had an MVP-caliber season in 2017 when they went to the Super Bowl. It got hurt right before the playoffs. Nick Foles took him the rest of the way, and then Carson Wentz never really returned to that form. We go to the phones now, and we have Seth calling from Los Angeles. Seth, you're on the William Haynes Show. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great, man. It's great to be back on the air, and it's great to finally hear from you. It's been a few months.
Yeah, I figured it might as well be on the inaugural call for the next year of the show.
Yeah, we both got to shake some rust off, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe. Well, you were fine. I was listening to the whole cast. I thought you were pretty solid.
Well, I appreciate that. What do you got tonight?
What have I got? Well, I was listening to everything you were saying. I thought you made a lot of good points. I definitely agree with a lot of it. I will say I think you seemed a little pessimistic, just a tad, and I get it with the whole Snell trade. I mean, I know that hurts. Like it's a painful thing for all of us, but I'm actually pretty optimistic for this season. I think that the Rays are being overlooked and underrated as usual, and I think that we're going to have a better shot than people give us credit for. If you want to know what I got.
Yeah, I didn't get my prediction for the season yet. I know we talked a little bit before I came on the air this year. I kind of understand where the critics, I guess, are coming from. I think the 18% chance to make the playoffs, that's complete bogus. I think the Rays will make the playoffs. I see kind of their ceiling at around 90 wins, though. I understand they made some nice additions. To me, my only concern is there's just so many uncertainties. We brought in all these pieces, all these unknowns, and who really knows how they work out.
My take is that, yes, when we last discussed this, which was probably a couple weeks ago, we had a lot of uncertainties. There were a whole lot of big, huge question marks. Now I feel a lot better. A lot of these acquisitions that have been made make me wonder if some of those uncertainties are starting to go away. And I also wonder if Fangraphs ran that 18% prediction. I wonder if they ran that before we made some of these moves, because I would certainly wonder if that's the case. I really think that what is our strength, and so this is something that no other team in the American League East has, rotation depth. I think that the Yankees' rotation is currently comprised of one incredibly brittle old man, one equally incredibly brittle, slightly younger man, Davy Garcia, Jordan Montgomery, and Cole. So this is a rotation, and their depth is incredibly circumspect behind that. You're looking at maybe Domingo Germán, who was absolutely terrible in the Dominican League from what I've seen. Like he was awful. The little bit of him that I saw is not good in the Dominican League. You're looking at Clark Schmidt, who is not ready from all reports. He's like a AAA kind of guy who's not quite ready for the bigs yet. And Davy's going to be your fifth starter. Like he's more than likely going to be their fifth starter. The same kind of thing's going on with the Blue Jays. You got Ryu dragging behind some people that are not so great. Like I don't want to say stuff that's not fit for the air, but I mean these guys are really, really circumspect. The depth that they've got behind him in terms of starting depth. Pearson, very, very good prospect, probably going to be very solid for them in the coming years. I don't know if he's ready. I don't know if he's going to be good enough to be essentially their number 2 starter. Like, if you really look at the people who they got behind him, they have not re-signed Taijuan Walker yet, and the rest are scary. And then when you look at the Rays, I think that's where the difference lies. If you like, I saw something on MLB Network the other day. Rarely do they produce very good takes, but this one I stuck with me. We've got just about 10 starting options. With Chris Mazza, we might have 11 in terms of legitimate starting options that we could bring up at any time if necessary. And that, I think, is a huge difference.
I think that is a great call, and I think you're really changing my mind here. I was just taking a glance at the various depth charts, and you're right, with both the Yankees and the Blue Jays, the starting rotations do look pretty good on paper. Like you said, with the Yankees, Cole, obviously the ace, but Kluber, again, he could fall apart. Who knows about him? Taillon has had some injury issues. Montgomery has been really bad lately, and theyve Garcia is an unknown. And on the Blue Jay side, Ryu, I don't even think is necessarily even an ace at this point. I'm mainly speaking on that start against the Rays in the wild card. But yeah, Nate Pearson was kind of just a reliever for them, and is he going to make the jump from reliever to second starter? He's got the talent, but may not be ready. And yeah, like you said, words not fit for air. Robbie Ray, Tanner Roark, and Steven Matz, yikes. That could provide some issues. That's a great lineup. I was going to say up there in Toronto, but still technically, geographically speaking, up north in Dunedin, about 30 minutes. But yeah, I think in those terms, if the Rays are going to win the American League East, it will be because of attrition. They just outlast these other teams because they have so much pitching depth that they are just prepared for whatever comes at them.
It could be more than simply outlasting. I mean, this is what we're talking about is the acquisitions that they've made. Let's be very clear about what was lost here. You know, we lost Blake Snell. Look, I mean, putting that out there right now, people call him the ace of the staff. Me and my father, we've always been Glasnow supporters. Like, in terms of who should be the ace of the staff, I have always been on the position that Snell is the number 2 pitcher. Everybody seems to think that, you know, and yes, he's more proven than Glasnow, but my biggest problem with Snell has always been his brittleness, has always been the inability to go deep into games, and really, I think he had attitude issues for pretty much the whole time. And I think that's something that affected their opinion of him as it goes. You know, like as the season went on, I keep seeing him like complaining after every time he gets pulled after, you know, a certain amount of pitches because he really can't go that length. You made an excellent point about where he's going. He's going to San Diego. He's going to a team that is going to use and abuse his arm until it falls off. And that is not something that I would be excited about if I was him, but he's apparently very, very excited to be there. But yeah, so we lost Snell. In terms of production, I don't think that is a loss that is irreplaceable. And we lost Morton, who barely produced for us at all last year. I mean, he was injured so much. It was like the level of production he had was negligible at best until the postseason, and then all of a sudden he turns into God himself. But I mean, that's not going to happen every year, and he's declining. He's getting older. Both of these guys, I think, we're in a position of decline. It's Snell at the very beginning. He's literally at the cusp of decline. Morton very much is getting into that period of decline. And I think that we've acquired replacements that have a lot of upside. The one that I have always been the biggest espouser of is Rich Hill. I think Rich Hill, I'm a Dodger fan. You know this. You know that my second team is the Dodgers. I watched Rich Hill for his entire tenure as a Dodger. This is a guy who puts in the work every single start. This is a guy who does not give up, even in the worst of situations. I mean, this man lost a perfect game in the 9th inning and still came out to pitch the 10th. Like, this is a guy who doesn't stop. And he is, as you mentioned, a great mentor for younger pitchers, which we have a plethora of who all need that mentorship. So I think that that acquisition alone, I would not be surprised if Rich Hill by himself can match Morton's production over the full 2021 season. Wouldn't stun me. I think Morton is going to, for $15 million that the Atlanta Braves signed him for, wow, I think that is a pretty ridiculous overpay personally.
Yeah, I agree with you there, definitely. If everything goes according to plan, I suppose, Rich Hill could be a one-for-one replacement with Morton. And then from there, my hope is that Chris Archer can be a quality 2 or 3 starter. And then you're really looking at, can a guy like Ryan Yarbrough reproduce what he did at times in 2020 and be that guy? And then after that, all you need is a Michael Wacha type, or you go with the opener. And then, yeah, your rotation is set, and I think it looks really nice.
And the thing is, what else is really advantageous for the Rays here? 2021 is a bridge year. Like, it's always been a bridge year. If you really look at our depth chart in terms of what is going forward, 2021 is a bridge year. 2021 is a year where we are getting these young starters in a position. 2022, all these young starters are going to be ready. You're going to be looking at Wander coming up as a starting shortstop at the same time as all these young pitchers start to come up. You got McClanahan, you've got McKay, and you've got Patino, all three of those guys could very well be anchors of the rotation. These are people with immense talent who I think will be all pretty much ready by 2022. So 2021 is always a bridge year, but then with some of these one-year deals they've done, they've made it so I think we could legitimately compete. Like, I think it could be more than just a 85, 90 win bridge year where we like barely make the playoffs. I would not be shocked if we win the division again. Wouldn't surprise me at this juncture, because I really think the Yankees got worse. I think the Yankees got legitimately worse. I don't think they improved in terms of their rotation. I think their rotation is now even more circumspect than it was last year. And I think the Blue Jays, while they did improve their offense and somewhat their defense, I mean, obviously Springer is going to be infinitely better than whoever they had in center field before that, Randall Grichuk, oh boy. But, like, in terms of position players, great. In terms of pitching, they also got worse. And they did nothing to patch those holes. I mean, they signed Robbie Ray again. They signed Tanner Rourke again. And then they were just like, okay, this is fine. Like, I assume that they're going to be expecting to get like 10 runs a game and win 10-9, but like, I that's not sustainable. Like, so, I mean, I'm being glib, but I do genuinely think that you mentioned attrition. That's a factor, but I also think that just in terms of pitching depth, both in bullpen and starters, I think we're the best. And I think pitching wins championships, and I think that is going to be something that is a factor for us this year. I really think it is possible that we could be looking at the Rays winning the division in a full season for a second time running, and I have more hope. I have more hope than I had after the Snell trade, but I do think that I was a little bit less, freaked out by that trade. I more had an issue with the optics than anything else, but we'll see. I have a lot of hope.
Yeah, you made some great points, and as I did the prep, I really had to catch myself up on what the Rays had done, and I think I came to the juncture, really, the Rays are at a very exciting place right now. They won the division last year. They have a chance to do it again this year, and like you said, the future with them is so bright. This influx of infield prospects, Wander, people are saying could be the next Mike Trout. Who knows? Hopefully. We've got, Lowe coming in the outfield. We've got, Rosarena. We've got all kinds of guys that are going to be coming up as soon as 2022. And to all the people that are bellyaching about the payroll for this year, I understand it's frustrating. I would wager the team probably did lose a little bit of money last year, so that's one reason why you shrink the payroll. But I think another reason why you do it is you save money this year, and hopefully going into next year where it could be full capacity, you can be making more money, you can spend a little bit more. Not only do you have these young guns coming up, but then you can go splurge for a free agent. Maybe you get a first baseman or you get a starter. Maybe one more piece to push them over the edge, and we could be talking about a run here where the Rays can be winning 4 AL East titles in a row. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. You're looking at a team that has so much promise. I mean, we talk about the Dodgers as a super team. Everybody talks about how the Dodgers are basically the new Golden State Warriors. Well, guess what? I don't really know if they're the Golden State Warriors. I think they're more aligned with, like, the Cleveland Cavaliers back in those days when they had LeBron. I think that the Rays are the Warriors. I think they're the team that could be a legitimate dynasty building on what they started now. Like, yeah, you lost the World Series now, but this is a team that has so much talent. If Wander is even close to Mike Trout, which I don't need him to be. I don't need Wander to be Mike Trout. I need him to be Wander. I need him to be as good as he can possibly be. But if he's even close to that level, the amount of people that he will have backing him up is more than Mike Trout has ever had in his entire career. And I say that as a guy who lives in Southern California and watches Mike Trout all the time. Like, I mean, I've seen this poor man have to suffer with rotations that would be politely characterized as an abomination to behold. and he's had to suffer for all this time with that utter and complete lack of a team behind him for so many years. Wander won't have to worry about that. Wander is going to have an incredible team behind him. Randy is going to have an incredible team behind him even this year. Like if those two guys are the stars of the future, which they very well could be. And let's not forget about Lau and Meadows, who are very much still around, very much still raking, or at least in the case of Lau still raking. I'll be interested to see what happens to Meadows. But this is a big four. Like we're putting together a big four on offense. With these pitchers coming in, we could be putting together a big four in the pitching rotation. We could be looking at a team that is as stacked as the current Dodgers, if not more than that, come 2022. And this year, while a bridge year, could very well be a high ceiling, high potential type year.
I hope so, and I think maybe my biggest concern from now until when all our biggest prospects are fully realized, and that means not only is Wander Franco and Vidal Brujan and all those guys up here, but they're hitting consistently and, they're established major league players. My worry is the way, guys like Brandon Lau and Austin Meadows finished the season last year. Granted, it's in the playoffs. You're facing really good pitchers. I'm nervous about this lineup hitting a brick wall, which they've been known to do at times, even, 2019, where if you're only scratching out 1 or 2 runs a game, your pitching staff is only going to take you so far. So catching a wave here is going to be big. Momentum needs to be established, or else this team could fall into a little bit of a lull. And then next thing you know, you're 8 games back of the Yankees. That's my biggest concern.
And I think that the issue there is we have not really ever had a complete team. You're getting to this point where it's like, have the Rays ever had a truly complete team? I think even last year, as good as they were, the completion of the team is something that's in doubt. You don't really have as solid of an outfield as you might like, with Meadows kind of not performing as expected. Your third base is looking like a bit of a hole last year. And your catcher, obviously, we have not had a hitting catcher in forever. So in terms of offense, yeah, I understand exactly the issue you're having, but you're a lot of those problems are going to be addressed through the prospect pool. I thought for a while that Ronaldo Hernandez was a future catcher. You kind of glossed over him in your prospect evaluation for what we got for Snell. I think Blake Hunt is the future catcher. I think from what I've seen from this kid, he is absolutely raked in certain areas before. I believe it was the 2019 season in A-ball. He was raking. In spring training last year, if I recall correctly, he was doing crazy stuff for the Padres. This is a guy who I think could very well be the future at the position. They say he's already got elite defensive skills, almost Zunino level defensive skills from what I've heard, and his offense is legit. So he might very well fill that void that we've had, and Mejia can be a bridge as well. Mejia has very good offense, or it has had a couple of times very good offense. Last year, terrible, but then again, who wasn't? And I think that we're going to see some good stuff out of him. And I think Wander really is probably going to end up filling the third base hole more than anything. Yeah. I would think he ends up at third base. He's got the profile. I don't think he's going to be a shortstop. I think Willie is still going to be the primary option there. So I think Wander could very well fill the third base hole. And I really do think Meadows is going to come back this coming year. I think Meadows is hungry. I think he's really angry with himself after just the kind of futility he experienced last year. It's basically a lost season. He got to see somebody like Randy basically completely overtake him in terms of production. I think he's got to be incredibly hungry. He's got to want to put himself back in the position that he was in 2019, where he was a star. This is a guy who hit 33 homers. He was a star for us in 19, and really took over when Lau was out. And once again, this is the depth coming into play. If we can ever have a year where Brandon Lau, Austin Meadows, Wander, and Randy are all playing at peak potential, that offense is all of a sudden one of the best in the league. And even when those pieces go piecemeal away, we still are able to produce. We still made the World Series last year with Brandon Lau in probably the worst slump I've ever seen him in, and Austin Meadows basically a non-factor. So imagine what happens if we ever have a year where all those guys are performing at peak capacity. 2021 could very well be that year. You might see Wander come up midway through the year. Who knows? 2021 could be the year. 2022, I would look to those guys. And I would see if they can all produce at the same time in 22 when all these rotation guys are coming at the same time, strap in. I mean, you could be looking at 108-plus wins if the offense can all come together and the pitching can all come together. It's a team that is dripping with talent, and with so much depth that we have, one of them goes down, another one takes its place. It is the true next man up mentality. The Yankees always go on and on about how they have so much depth. If you look at their depth chart, not really true this year. So it's going to be real interesting to see what happens if some of those guys can't stay healthy. You know, like this is a team that just really can't stay healthy at all, and they don't have the depth to replace their players. So I'll be very interested to see what happens. I have more hope than I have had in a while. Even after the World Series loss, I still have plenty of hope for this team. Plenty of it.
Yeah, I love that positivity. One thing you opened my eyes to last year about Austin Meadows was his potential issue with COVID could have been something holding him back. We saw 2020 have an effect on some of these guys. It seemed like Yandy Diaz just didn't come into this season with a good swing. Yoshi Tsutsugo, that's the worst possible position for an incoming player from Japan to be in that way. So we could have all kinds of guys returning to form, and I think maybe your optimism really could be realized because this team could really get rolling.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? Take it from somebody who knows. I'm a Dodger fan. I got to suffer through 2 World Series losses in a row before they ever got to the potential they're at. Now, my fandom of them has kind of waned a little bit. I am seeing a lot of really toxic stuff coming out of that fandom after their win. They have become the very thing that they hated. You know, these gloating kind of really annoying people. I see them online all the time, and that's just it. I finally snapped today on Twitter and just like openly posted like on my Twitter. I have Dodger fans that follow me. I was just like, you guys need to stop. Like this is getting to the point of ridiculousness. But before the peak, I suffered through 2 losses of the World Series in a row alongside all the other Dodger fans, and they never stopped being hopeful because they knew full well that their team had incredible potential, and if one year they could just put it all together, they would win the World Series, and guess what? They did. So I feel the exact same way about the Rays. I think the Rays are insanely stacked. I think they are a team that has tons of potential, tons. And I think that these Fangraph systems that, you know, say that we're going to put up less WAR than the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Blue Jays, and that we're going to have less of a chance of winning, of getting to the playoffs than all 3 of those teams. They have said themselves that they tend to underrate the Rays because these people play above their potential because they're on this team. They play above their expected projected values. And I would not be stunned for a second if that happens once again, and they once again end up overestimating us this year, or underestimating us this year. And it also wouldn't shock me if they underestimate us in 2021, even with all these, or 2021 off season, like going into 22, even with all of these people performing above their usual projected level. Wouldn't stun me if they once again underrate us. Like that's just how it is. The Rays are perpetual underdogs. They always have been. They always will be. But I think one of these days, everything's going to come together in just the right way, and you won't have to worry about that anymore. And we'll finally have a chip. We'll finally have the ability to just silence all the people who have doubted us.
I love your optimism. I'm so glad you bring that to the show because I think the Rays fan base needs a little bit more of that, especially right now. One last thing I want to ask you before you go, and I always appreciate your time so much. As a Dodger fan, how are you feeling about the Trevor Bauer signing?
Oh, this is a fun one. I have so many feelings about that signing. Most of them are rage. Most of them are intense, vehement dislike. I do not like Trevor Bauer. I think that's been discussed between the two of us before. I am not a fan of this guy. He is the kind of player that I would not want on a team that I like in any sense or form ever. Like, just in terms of on the field production, in terms of off the field antics, just can't stand the dude. I mean, this is a guy who said, I could increase my spin rate by 400 RPM if I had no morals and used substances. In 2019, he said this. In 2020, his spin rate increased by about 380 RPM. So what are we to believe? Are we to believe that he has no morals? I do, especially based on the other stuff that he said, which, I mean, this show is not a political show, so I won't get into the many, many, many stupid things that he said about politics that I vehemently disagree with. But, like, beyond that, just the substance issue, the amount of overpay that assignment, I think it's incredible overpay. I think it is. Andrew Friedman came from the Rays system. He should know better. Like, he should look at this and say, even on a short deal, this is a terrible, terrible overpay for a guy who has a 3.90 career ERA. Keep in mind, Odorizzi has a lower ERA, and he hasn't even been signed yet. He has a lower career ERA, and he hasn't even been signed yet. That is terrible. I mean, and we're signing this guy to the highest average annual value of any pitcher or any player ever. I mean, forget pitcher. He's getting paid more annually than Mike Trout. I mean, come on. Like, Mike Trout is a guy who plays every single day and puts up GOAT numbers, puts up Hall of Fame right now. If he retired at this moment, he would get into the Hall of Fame at this very second. And he would probably be a first ballot Hall of Famer, regardless of playoff experience. This is a guy who plays every single day, and he's making less money than Trevor Bauer. That is just crazy to me. And so, yeah, no, I am vehemently against this signing. Think he's going to be a huge clubhouse cancer, a huge, show all the time. Every single start with him is going to be a massive production. And I mean, honestly, he's the kind of guy who searches his name on the internet. So I mean, if you even remotely put his name in like a caption for the recording of this, he'll probably hunt me down and tell me how I'm completely ridiculous and totally wrong, and how he's going to put up GOAT numbers this year and he's going to be better than Mike Trout. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I'm really against this one. This is one of the. I told you my Dodger fandom has gotten to the point of, the Rays are definitely my number one team at this juncture. And really, this signing was what tipped me over the edge. I watched this all unfold, and I was just like, this is terrible. This is the Dodgers becoming everything they were supposed to be the opposite of. They're becoming the Yankees. They're becoming the team that buys championships, and that was never what they were before. I mean, if you look at their championship-winning team last year, they're more homegrown than the Rays. It's like, and now all of a sudden they're splurging all this money on a guy who is really not that good. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know what he's going to bring to the team. I also think he's the 3 starter. I think they're paying their 3 starter more than their 1 and their 2. If I'm going to be honest, I think that Kershaw and Buehler are both better than him at this juncture. Kershaw's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Even if he is in his decline, he pitched very well last year in the shortened season. And Bauer was obviously better, but I mean, small sample size and more importantly, juicing. Like, he's using essentially the pitching equivalent of steroids. So, and then you got Buehler, who is by far the ace of the staff. So they're paying their 3 starter double what they're paying their 1 and their 2 put together. That's crazy to me.
I love how the Rays fan in you has taken over, and you've come to despise those large signings that so often for those teams end up becoming busts, and they're on the chain for a lot of money over the next 3 years. Fans in New York, the Yankees or the Mets, they'd be taking a Broadway celebrating in the streets with a signing like that. But yeah, it's really not the right way to build a team, and who knows how it'll go for them. I hope Dodger fans enjoy their clubhouse being broadcast live on YouTube to all of their fans.
Oh, boy. Yeah, and I mean, I love me a good big signing any day of the week. If the Rays had signed Marcell Ozuna, I would have been throwing a bloody parade, but this is not a big signing that I can ever get behind. Like, this much money for a pitcher who very well could break down, who's not going to be playing every day. Don't like it. Don't like it at all.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Seth, thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad you called in tonight, and I'm hoping maybe we could talk a couple more times during spring training to kind of buy the time until the regular season begins. I'm so glad I have these listeners, and I thank you for listening to the program as well. It's great. People like you make this so much more enjoyable. Thank you again for the call.
Absolutely. Hey, I'll be around. I mean, at this point, I'm starting to become like a guest spot on here, but I mean, as long as you're willing to have me, I'll be around to rant and rave about all the things that I hate. And like, I'm starting to become like the Peter Griffin, like, this is what grinds my gears of baseball. But I mean, I do try to bring the positivity in terms of the Rays. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, and thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime. You're great radio. Have a good one, man.
You too.
All right, that was Seth from Los Angeles. Again, Seth, thank you so much for the call. About an hour and a half mark. I think we're going to cut the program off here. I have some more I kind of want to talk about, but I know it's going to be pretty dry now that I've covered all the off-season stuff until at least spring training games start, and even then, that's not going to provide a lot of content. I did not really start this program last season until really opening day, so again, I hate the word, but a little bit unprecedented as I kind of wade this water, these territories. Schedule will be kind of on the fly. I think during spring training, once the games start, again, first game February 28th against the Braves, maybe do shows twice a week just to kind of update on how players are looking, how the games are going. One of the worst things I think you can do is overanalyze spring training games. Just you got to take them for what they're worth. It's guys that haven't played baseball in 4 or 5 months, and they're just getting back into their groove. By no means is it indicative of what the team will become. I know the Rays had some stinkers in spring training last year before everything got shut down. Spring training doesn't mean a whole lot, but with so many new incoming players, get to see Walker and Rich Hill and Chris Archer back in a Rays uniform, and all these pitching acquisitions, get to see them and see how they look and get familiar with their arm angles and different pitches and all that exciting stuff. And Glasnow is going to be, looks like, working in a slider into his repertoire, so that kind of exciting stuff. I think right now position players will report next Tuesday, February 23rd, excuse me. I think what I'll do is, let's call it Friday night, I think. Next Friday night, which is the 26th of February, and that'll be basically 2 days, a day ahead of the first game. So we'll kind of get ready for that, and we'll have some more information then. So again, we'll be back next Friday, February 26th. It'll be fun. First show back. Feels good to have the rust knocked off. It has been too long since I've done this. Been a blast. Again, the call with Seth was fantastic. I appreciate everyone who tuned into the show tonight. I look forward to hopefully expanding the fan base this year. Experimenting, doing some live streaming on Twitch, excuse me, doing some simulcast stuff potentially, and getting this program out to more people because the feedback has been so positive, and I'm thankful for that. So until then, hit the show close button again. Yeah, knocking off the rust. Didn't mention it, but again, Bucks, congratulations on the World Series. I would love to talk more about that. Next Friday would be a great time to get into that. Tom Brady, who would have known? He would have won his 7th Super Bowl, and he did it in Tampa Bay in Raymond James Stadium. How cool is that? Rays are looking good, man. Team is looking good. Chris Archer is back. Starting rotation looks amazing. Bullpen has got all kinds of new faces. Bye, Blake Snell. Bye, Morton. Bye to all of you. We'll see you next Friday.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.